Podcaster Joe Rogan and hip-hop artist Ice Cube debated recently whether Robert F. Kennedy Jr. can stop the U.S. empire. Let's watch.
He seemed like a guy who at least is down to deep dive.
Yeah.
And talk real and you know, really try to dissect what's really going on instead of just going with the herd, which would be easy for him to do, like go with the herd. You know, he may be, you know, even ahead more, or he may even be doing better, you know, when they poll. I think he's like 20% of people or something. But
yeah, he'd probably be doing better.
Probably be doing better, and, you know, instead of, you know, maybe he'll be one of they guys. And so by him going this route, it seems like he's on a more noble route.
Kennedy reposted a portion of that conversation on Twitter, adding, "This is a conversation between Joe Rogan and Ice Cube that we should all be having, #Kennedy24.
Now, you know more about Ice Cube's trajectory than I do. Want to fill me in?
In some ways, I consider Ice Cube to be a fellow traveler because he is someone who, despite the existential threat that was presented to the world in 2020 with Donald Trump running for president, had the audacity to think that the Democratic nominee should have to earn votes of Democratic voters or any voter who wanted to vote for them. Right. And so specifically, Ice Cube was advancing what he called at the time, and maybe still, the contract with Black America, which, you know, pointed out some true facts about, I think, 45% of Black businesses closed in the context of the pandemic. Black people were dying at higher rates. There's longstanding wealth inequality between Black and white Americans, with Black families on average having a nickel, some people say nickel, some people say a dime worth of wealth to every dollar of white wealth. And he advanced a plan to try to resolve some of those issues, in addition to police reform and some other kinds of things. And he worked closely with a very well-respected left economist who's actually a Bernie Sanders supporter and I think surrogate at one time, Derek Hamilton, who's also an economist who studies reparations and the like, about how to structure an economic agenda that would benefit Black Americans. And he says, look, Black people have been voting for Democrats since time immemorial. They feel like it's a captured group that they don't actually have to appeal to. All they have to do is be less bad, less racist, less whatever than the Republicans, and they think we're entitled to our votes. And we've been languishing here within the Democratic Party without any material uplift for decades, and I would like something in exchange for my vote. Now, for saying that, he was dragged by the liberal media, including the Black liberal media, and they lied about his relationship to Trump. He presented this plan to both Trump and Biden. Trump sat down with him and had a meeting. I think Biden had his people had a meeting with him, but didn't personally meet with him. And he was characterized as meeting with Trump and being in cahoots with Trump and supporting Trump. He's like, no, someone's going to win. Just like lobbyists give to both parties, someone's going to win, and I want whoever wins to advance my agenda. It's on you to pitch to me why you're going to be the guy. And so he has been a counterculture thinker since then, obviously since long before then, obviously through his music. But it seems to be continuing along that line and being and demonstrating that he is unwilling to simply go along with the Democratic Party status quo. And he's looking to someone like RFK Jr., who's demonstrated a willingness to buck that establishment status quo.
Today, on my drive to the studio, I saw for the first time in the wild an RFK Jr. bumper sticker on a car, which is totally like, you know, when people count lawn signs, they go, oh, I don't know anybody voting for X, but, you know, all the lawn signs in my neighborhood. It doesn't mean anything. I know it doesn't mean anything, but it does, it's not... We're discussing whether the support for interest in RFK Jr. is purely an online phenomenon. Or I think a lot of people are wondering that. Yeah. You know, he's getting. I mean, his strategy is an online strategy. Talk to people on podcasts, people who listen. It's not exactly. I mean, there are some people who just listen to podcasts in the course of their normal day, and they're not necessarily super active on social media. But it seems to overlap with the very internet-involved people. But there's a real. I suspect there are real RFK Jr. supporters. In the wild as well, people who are frustrated with the COVID stuff, who are frustrated with, that there's endless funding for Ukraine and not enough funding for anything else at home, who don't trust, who think that the federal government maybe has been weaponized or is cloak and dagger behind closed doors, pressuring social media companies, shut down their businesses, did lots of stuff, but don't find Trump to be a very compelling figure to fight that, and are probably sick of just Trump antics in general. How can you not be at this point? And if you don't like the job Biden's doing, but you're sick of Trump, I think that describes a lot of people.
It does. Now, what's funny is I would disagree with one thing that Ice Cube said there, which is that this idea that RFK Jr. might be doing better if he were just an establishment candidate, if he would just be their guy. And that, Ice Cube was characterizing it as a big risk that RFK Jr. was taking to be anti-establishment, and that he might be polling higher if he were just to be an establishment politician. I disagree with that. I think that his entire energy, the entire appeal of him comes from being anti-establishment. I don't think that if he just ran as, hey, I'm a Biden candidate and I'm just a younger version of Biden and vote for me,
if you're competing for people who love the establishment, people who love the establishment are already happy with what they've got.
Right. So I do think that he is very savvy. This is not a criticism in the least, but it is very savvy to understand that your appeal is about not going along with the flow. And there's a certain lack of specificity to the way Ice Cube was describing what he likes about RFK Jr. And I think that some people will balk at that and say, oh, he doesn't even know what he believes in. He doesn't even know what he's talking about. But the reality is that most Americans they don't have all day to sit around reading these articles and clicking through Twitter the way that we do. And there is a vibe, there is a vibe-based reality to the way that we come to politics.
That's how most people vote. Most people vote based on vibes.
It's nothing to look down your nose at. It's just
who do you want to have a beer with kind of thing.
Yes, and if you don't have the time to have a granular perspective on what people's policy positions are, knowing that at very least they have demonstrated the courage to do what might not be politically expedient because they think it's the right thing to do, is valuable to people. It was part of why people liked Trump. It was part of why people liked Bernie Sanders, and it's part of why people like RFK Jr. Even if you don't agree with some of his positions on vaccines, a lot of people are looking to that and saying, well, that's a very toxic area to wade into. That's a very politically divisive pool to wade into. His willingness to do that, even if it's going to hurt him, says to me that he has cojones. There's some chutzpah there that I admire, and maybe he'll fight for me too.
Right.
And you got to acknowledge that that's where people are coming from. And it doesn't necessarily mean I agree with him about every aspect of his agenda. People want to know,
well, what are the implications of what he thinks about it? Right. I think I do disagree with him on at least some of the science of vaccines, but is he going to prohibit people from taking them? He said no. Is he going to force people to take them? He said no. Well, that's what I care about, and that's what a lot of people care about. Is it, am I a truck driver that's going to lose my job because I don't want to make this choice for myself? Under Biden, maybe. They tried. Under RFK Jr., no. That's the answer, no. And that, I think, appeals to a lot of people. Yeah,
it is interesting also watching some of the backlash that RFK Jr. received after he tweeted support of affirmative action after the decision last week, and also support for student debt cancellation. Right. Now, we talked about student debt cancellation with him in our interview, so it would come as no surprise to our listeners. I think ours is one of the few interviews that asked him about that particular subject, which is so front of mind to so many, 44 million Americans who are now being asked to restart their payments in the fall after being told by the Biden administration that they were going to get $10,000 to $20,000 of cancellation. It's a real bait and switch, and people are very angry about it. So we knew that he was supportive of that policy. But when he came out against the Supreme Court decision, a lot of people were like, well, I supported you based on these vibes, but now you're demonstrating to me that you really are a Democrat, and I don't like you anymore.
He's running for the Democrat.
He is a Democrat.
I do on policy. I disagree with him on both of those policies. I am not a Democrat. I am very not inclined to vote for a Democratic candidate, and that's why I appreciate a lot of what he is saying on other subjects, and I might, conclude I might rank him more favorably versus other candidates, depending on how everything shakes out. But yes, he is a Democrat. He's running to be a Democrat. He holds Democratic views on those two issues. So, and I disagree with him on those, but you're right that it was coming as a surprise, I think, to some of his online, more right-leaning fans.
Yeah, so what's going to win out? The vibes or the policy? Are the policies going to overtake the vibes? Some of those policies are very popular, and I think like the student debt one is a winning issue for him, even if it irritates the kind of crypto online audience. So we'll see. It's going to be a very interesting race to watch. We'll be following it here. Please stick around for more Rising after this.